What is going on, everyone? This is Zach back here with another episode of Clutch Crew Sports. And if you didn't get slimed from Nickelodeon, you didn't jump off sides on fourth down, and you weren't a bad referee, this podcast will be for you because we saw some of that on full display this wildcard weekend. We have a great show for you guys. Hopefully you enjoy. And now let me introduce you to the rest of the crew.
What's going on, everybody? This is Eric, your ranting co-host here. No rants for me today because the Titans and the Colts lost. Let's go.
Woo!
Yes, I knew Zach would agree with me on that
Yep.
for sure. So, yeah, definitely excited to talk some football here and ready to get into it.
And what is going on, guys? It is Connor, the co-host with the most, and no rants from Eric, but you will be hearing a rant from me later on because, unfortunately, worst case scenario happened for me. Not only did the Steelers get eliminated, but that means that the Browns and the Ravens are still in. So, Chiefs and Bills counting on you guys need to take them out because Steelers can't win the Super Bowl, and the Ravens and the Browns better not win the Super Bowl.
Imagine the Browns. Oh, man. All right.
Yeah, what's up, guys? It's me, Nate here. I don't know about you guys, but I actually had some fun with that Nickelodeon broadcast yesterday. But I'm looking forward to the games this weekend. Should be some good matchups there, so excited to get into talking about it.
Yeah, so we're going to make our episode very similar to what we did last week. We will go through all four of the games and kind of preview the X factors. Each of us have been assigned to a certain team that we think will win, or one that we're playing devil's advocate for. We don't think will win, but we do give them a good enough shot that we can make a case for them. And then later on in the show, Connor's got his Steelers rant. I'm really excited to listen to see what that's going to be about. Eric agrees with me. And then we've got some quarterback questions. So Chicago and Washington, two teams eliminated from the playoffs. We'll kind of be discussing the quarterback situations there. And later on, we'll have a more in-depth quarterback for the whole league sort of podcast episode. But we'll just focus on these guys since they just played in the playoffs and lost. So, but we do have the divisional round. And we'll start with the AFC. So the first game here is going to be the Browns at the Chiefs. And all four of us have decided to pick the Chiefs to win. And Eric has been the strongest Chiefs believer this whole season, really, and last season as well. So we're giving you the honors of saying the X factors for the Chiefs. What do they need to do to win, and how you think the game will go?
Yeah, absolutely, man. I mean, before I give my reasons for the Chiefs, I do have to give the Browns a lot of credit. I picked the Steelers to beat them last week with all the COVID issues they were having and some people that they were going to have being out. I just really didn't think that they were going to have a chance, and they came out from the beginning and dominated. So the Browns are definitely here to play. But with that being said, I still have to go with the Chiefs here. And obviously, we got Patrick Mahomes. I mean, he's the biggest difference maker, and I don't think the Chiefs are going to make the same mistakes that the Steelers had going on really early in the game that gave the Browns that big lead. I don't see the Browns having that happen for them again. I think the Chiefs will get out to a much hotter start than the Steelers did. But the main X factor for the Chiefs is going to be their defense and stopping the run game of the Browns. Obviously, everybody knows with Nick Chubb and Kareem Hunt, what the Browns are going to want to do is to run the ball, and the Chiefs are going to need to sell out and stop that and make the Browns beat you through the air. Baker Mayfield's had some good games at times, but he's also been inconsistent at times. And with the Browns having some injuries on the O-line. I don't know if anybody's heard anything about Jack Conklin's status, but I know he got hurt in the game against the Steelers. I don't know if he's going to play, but if he's out, then they need to sell out to stop the run, put the Browns in obvious passing situations, and then go after Baker and make him beat you. If they do that, the Chiefs should easily win the game. But if they let the Browns get the run game going, keep it close, that's where it could get interesting. But I still got the Chiefs. I think they get it done here.
Yeah, so I'll preface my argument by saying I did pick the Chiefs in this game, and actually this was my original AFC Championship prediction. Everyone thought I was crazy for having the Browns in that far in the playoffs, but they're just one game away from making that game, and I really do think they would have a decent shot at winning this game. I think it's going to be close, and normally you would say don't get behind, or I mean or get the lead is a better way of saying that. Get the lead, but we've seen the Chiefs come back from big leads in the playoffs before, so it's like they're gonna have to do more than just get a big lead. They're gonna have to do something that the Texans did not do last year, which is be aggressive throughout the whole game. And this is a little bit of a problem because against the Steelers, well, I didn't watch much of the game. I know at the end they weren't they were being prevent defense or just very passive, and they can't do that against the Chiefs at all. If they do that, if they try that against the Chiefs, instead of dink and dunks for 5 and 10 yards, it's going to be dink and dunks for 30, 40 yards, and it's gonna look bad. So they have to keep the pressure up even if they have a big lead. If they go up with another big lead like they did against the Steelers, they have to keep to their game plan and keep trying to score points and get touchdowns on the board, because I'll say this too: you're not going to beat the Chiefs kicking field goals. If you get in fourth down situations, and I know some of my co-hosts don't necessarily agree with me on this point, but going for it on fourth down is going to be a big thing for the Browns, because if it's fourth and I think 5 or less, and they're in field goal range, I think they almost have to, unless the defense is playing like unbelievable and it's at the end of the game, I think they almost always have to be going for it, because you cannot kick 3 points against Kansas City and expect to win the game. So they're going to have to, I think, play really aggressive. As far as the offense, they got to keep what their strength is, and that's the run game. And hopefully Conklin's back. I was looking that up, Eric, in between.
Okay.
And it said day to day. So I don't know if Conklin will be playing with a hamstring. You never know.
He'll probably try. It's the playoffs after all.
Definitely, this is not a time to sit down. So if he can, he will. But so we'll see what happens. But either way, the offensive line's been pretty well, and they got to keep the run game going. This is not going to be a week where they can have an off week with running the football, because that's also going to kill time of possession. And when you play the Chiefs, you want to limit the possessions. It's like playing a team in basketball that's got a high, that's like very fast paced, like the Warriors were a couple of years ago. You want to limit possessions. You want to draw out the shot clock. You want to chew the clock in the game. That's the kind of formula that you have to beat the Chiefs, which have only been beaten twice this season. One of those games was without Mahomes and their starters. So it's going to take a lot of lucky breaks, I think, and it's going to take everything I said for the Browns to win, and probably still need some more luck on their side with other things, a fumble, an interception, something like that. They can't turn the ball over. They got to play perfect. But the thing is the Browns have a good enough team to do this, and we saw it last week. So I definitely think it's a realistic possibility, and I think it'll be a good game to watch. I'm excited to watch this. But at the end of the day, I do think the Chiefs win, but the Browns fans should be feeling good. They just won their first playoff game in 25, 26 years or something like that. So good for the Browns, and I'll be rooting for them. Yeah.
I guess I'll follow what you said there really quickly. There is such a thing as being too aggressive.
Well, okay. So what do you? Okay, so we got time, so we can ask you this. What do you agree with me on, like that 4th and 5 or less thing? Like
I would say 4th and 2 or less. Okay. I think 4th and 5 is like, because the Chiefs do have a better defense this year than they did last year.
Yeah.
So I don't think they're one of those teams that you can go in there thinking like, oh, like, you know, if we end up in 4th down, we can easily get this. Like, the Chiefs do have a good defense this year. So I think, and also definitely like you say that you're not going to beat the Chiefs by getting 3 points, which I agree. But there's also scenarios where, like, you know, if you do that too often where you don't go for the field goal and you keep going for it on 4th down, then you could just end up finding yourself in a bigger hole, because you're giving up field position most of the time in that scenario, instead of, you know, taking the field goal and then forcing Kansas City to go down the field. So, but definitely, I think, you know, I'm all for teams being more aggressive in the playoffs, because it's now or never. But I think like 4th and 2, unless I think is a more realistic scenario.
Nate, what about you? Are you more with Connor, or are you more aggressive with this with the 4th and 5 thing that I said?
Oh yeah, I mean I'm definitely usually I'm more aggressive on this sort of thing. If it's unless like you said, if their defense is playing out of their minds and they're keeping Mahomes in check, obviously take the points. But it's like when you got a team like Kansas City or even in college, when they're playing someone like Alabama, like if you have those chances inside their end, like you gotta go for the big points.
Same thing to Eric.
Yeah, I mean, I guess for me, like, it just kind of depends on more so what the scenario is. Like, say if like I'm the Browns and I'm up 20-14 and it's 4th and 5, I'm going to kick the field goal to go up by 2 scores. But if I'm down 21-7, okay, we need to get back in the game. Like we're going for it. So it kind of, I'm always the like play it by ear and like make a judgment call. I can't say one way or the other, but but I mean, I definitely see where you're coming from here, though, just based on the matchup and who they're going up against. I mean, y'all know when we play Madden and stuff, like I'll usually be like kind of more conservative, but if y'all are like gunning it out like how the Chiefs play, then I'm like, okay, I need to put my foot on the gas a little more. So I can definitely see why maybe they should this game, but I do also agree with Connor, though. Like you got to be careful, and you don't want to just be aggressive just to be aggressive. So that I guess that's my take on that.
Yeah, we'll see how it goes. Should be an entertaining game, and let's go over to the other AFC game, Ravens at Bills. I'm the only one taking the Ravens in this game, and Connor, Eric, and Nate all have the Bills. Fun fact, now that we're at the end of the AFC here, since last year and still going, I have not gotten an AFC playoff game prediction wrong. Last year, I had my AFC bracket perfect from the beginning of the playoffs, and it stayed perfect until maybe this week. I don't know. But
now you've just jinxed yourself. The announcers.
I know, dude. I
Zach,
know.
Were you saying your picks are automatic?
10 weeks without Dr. Pepper.
Oh God, how will I live?
Sorry, I had to.
No, that's funny. You actually did. I probably did just because myself. Honestly, we'll come back next week and the Browns and Bills will won. Like, but. Okay, let's hear from the favorites' point of view. Connor, you talk about the Bills and the X factors for them in this game.
Yeah, I mean, the key obviously for the Bills is, the key for anybody playing the Ravens. You just got to stop Lamar Jackson. I think the biggest thing for the Bills, really, because the Bills have struggled with run defense, but honestly, I think they could take some cues from just look at what the Titans did in that game against the Ravens, because there were a lot of, other than a couple big Lamar Jackson runs, the Titans, for the most part, really held the Ravens' run game in check. Like Lamar Jackson, on a lot of those read option plays, like he wasn't really finding room to go. J.K. Dobbins couldn't find anywhere to go at all. And they were forcing Lamar Jackson to throw it, which is why their offensive output was a bit lower, considering that the Titans, out of pretty well every team coming into this playoffs, except for like pretty much between them and Green Bay, the Titans, between the Titans and the Packers, those were the two worst defenses coming into this playoffs. And the fact that the Titans were able to hold Lamar Jackson in check makes me nervous for their sake. Not nervous because I sure hope they lose, but nervous for their sake going in a game against the Bills. Now, the Bills, the run defense is their weakness, but if they can force Lamar Jackson to throw it, this secondary for the Buffalo Bills is one of the best in the NFL. So Lamar Jackson isn't going to be able to throw it all over the place on the Buffalo Bills like he kind of was against the Tennessee Titans in the last game. So that's the big key for the Bills. They need to stop Lamar Jackson and also just keep the offense going. This is one of the hottest offenses in the league right now, and the Ravens obviously have a very good defense, but Josh Allen and the offense have shown that they can put up big numbers against anyone. Stephon Diggs is just like a machine when it comes to catching the ball. It seems like he's always getting open. So the Bills just have to keep up what they've been doing recently. I do think it's going to be a close game. Like I said, obviously, I think the Bills probably were more so hoping for the Steelers this week, given how the Steelers don't have any sort of run game. But I think it does play to their strengths a little bit that if they can stop the run game, then they're going to force Lamar Jackson to throw, which is obviously Lamar's weakness and the Bills' strength on defense. So just really looking for that to stop that run game. But it'll be a good game. And like I said, go Bills, because I don't need the. I mean, honestly, I'd rather the Browns win the Super Bowl than the Ravens. So
Yeah,
go
sure.
Bills.
Yeah, so I actually, this is a true pick here for me. I picked the Ravens, and I'm sticking with it. There were some things I liked and some things I didn't like from the game against the Titans. For the Ravens defense, the fact that they were able to stop Derrick Henry was great. I didn't think they would have that much success against him. The problem is that's not the Bills' strength. They're obviously a passing team first. So that's not really going to be. They're going to have to totally like change the game plan that they had because they're going up against a very different type of team with the Bills, like the opposite of the Titans on offense. And then really the big matchup that I'm looking forward to and seeing how it goes, and it's something that they're going to have to. I think this would give them the best chance to win. Really, is like shutting down Stephon Diggs at all costs, like double teaming him, having Humphrey and Peters, the corners for the Ravens, and a safety shadowing. Like they're gonna have to like do things to Diggs to really make him not get over 100 yards because he's so good. And he exceeded my expectations. I thought he would be good with the Bills, but I didn't ever think he'd be this good with the Bills. And that's the biggest part of their offense. And if you can take away Diggs or at least limit him so he doesn't burn you every play, then you have a much more favorable matchup with the rest of the Bills' offensive skill players. And you're going to have to get a pass rush, which I didn't see a whole lot of, honestly, against Tennessee, which is fine because they were geared to stopping the run. That was what they were selling out for. But they're going to have to get a pass rush and make it uncomfortable for Josh Allen, I think, defensively. And then offensively, it's obviously Connor's already stated what it's going to come down to. And Lamar Jackson, I think, is going to have to he's going to need to have 2 or 3 big runs like he had in the Titans game where he just takes off and nobody can catch him. Like whether it's even, it doesn't even have to be for a touchdown, just like something to bail him out on like a 3rd and long where nobody's open or he can't throw it. Like, because honestly, he's not as good of a thrower as he was last year. So if he's not able to throw for the first down, he has to be able to use his legs and succeed that way. So he's gonna need a lot of key run plays, and then they're just gonna keep running the ball, I think, because that's the weakness of the Bills' defense, like Connor highlighted. It's definitely the weakest part. We saw what Jonathan Taylor was doing to them last week, and other teams have done before. So they're gonna need to run the ball, do classic Ravens things, run the ball, play defense, and Lamar's gonna have to be big in the run game as well. But this is going to be a good matchup too. But these are all good matchups, I think, except for one of the NFC games. But we'll get to that in a second.
Hint, wink, wink.
Yeah, we'll transition now and go over to the NFC and talk about those games now. So we've got the Rams and the Packers. The Rams were the big surprise of the weekend. This was the biggest upset, I think, that happened, and they ended up beating the Seahawks in Seattle, which was the first time in a long time somebody had done that in the playoffs. No 12th man, obviously, so a little different. But now they have a road trip to Green Bay. So we got Rams and Packers here for the divisional round. And despite some of the anti-Packers bias we have on our crew, all four of us are taking the Packers. I'm put in the tough spot where I'm going to be rooting for them this week because we have the Rams draft pick. But let's hear from Nate first for the favorite side and talk about Green Bay. What's going to be the X factors for them against the Rams in this game, Nate?
Yeah, so I mean, for me, obviously I picked Green Bay. I think they have, I think overall the rosters, to me, has been more talented this year. I think the most obvious X factor is Aaron Rodgers. I mean, outside of maybe Patrick Mahomes, I don't think there's obviously a more talented quarterback in the NFL right now. He's a guy that can really take over games, and he can keep the Packers in it, basically on his own. It seems like. So I think if he comes out and plays, like the Aaron Rodgers we all know, I think they definitely have a very good shot at this. Other thing is, that Green Bay defense too is, if they can step up, and it's not. LA hasn't had a terrifying offense this year. They're by no means are they like Kansas City or Buffalo or anything like that. But if Green Bay's defense can step up, that'd be a huge thing for them as well. But really, this shouldn't be. You don't like to say this because divisional round of the playoffs, you don't want to write anybody out. Since they got this far, but this shouldn't be. I wouldn't think too tough of a matchup though, just because what LA's gone through with their quarterback situation, all the injuries there. Aaron Donald seems like he's gonna play, but he's obviously banged up. He might not be 100%. So if those injuries kind of catch up to LA, it could be a tough one for them. So I definitely like Green Bay. Obviously, the reason we all chose them, but I'm interested to see the argument for LA here.
Yeah, so Connor, go ahead and spill the devil's advocate for the LA Rams to win this.
Yeah, this was definitely, out of all the cases that are being made here, this was definitely the toughest one to come up with. But I think the big key for the Rams in this game is they're really, in a way, I think that they actually do match up with Green Bay quite well. The fact that Green Bay's obvious biggest weakness, same as the Bills, the Green Bay is terrible run defense. So the Rams are really going to have to take advantage of that when they go to the game, because obviously Jared Goff is banged up. Apparently Wolford might end up playing. I don't know. I was reading an article about the Rams and their injury situation, and apparently they said that Wolford only had a stinger, which, it looked like he almost had a broken neck or something. He went to the hospital. So I feel like you don't go to the hospital for just a stinger. So who knows there, but obviously Jared Goff still has the thumb issue. But they're really going to have, Cam Akers and Malcolm Brown need to feast on this poor Green Bay run defense, because we all know that, it was evident in the Seattle game that Jared Goff isn't going to be able to complete a lot of throws. I think he threw it under 20 times in that game, and he only completed probably around 7 or 8 of his throws. So definitely going to need to rely on that run game. They're possibly going to be without Cooper Kupp. If they can get into the passing game, it's going to be difficult for them, because obviously the strength of the Green Bay defense is the secondary, and Cooper Kupp is banged up, and Robert Woods can't do everything on his own. So it's really just going to be the offensive line and the run game. The offensive line needs to open up holes for the run game, and they need to keep Jared Goff clean, because if he has time, I think he can honestly, possibly complete some passes, but he needs that time. He needs to be able to set his feet and find the open receiver rather than doing these rollouts. And then honestly, even without Aaron Donald, obviously Aaron Donald's hoping to play, but who knows if he will or not. But if he does play, even without him, the Rams defense has still shown that they are a really good defense. They're probably one of the most underrated defenses, I think, going into the playoffs.
I think they were statistically the best, I want to say, actually, in the whole NFL.
Yeah, they were season. They were one of those defenses, like you said, that they're one of those defenses that fly under the radar, where they actually are really good, but no one really talks about them because the Rams weren't a fantastic team this year, so people just kind of forgot about them. All the hype was going to the Ravens and the Steelers and the Colts and all these teams that were doing really and the Buccaneers, these teams that have big names on the defense that were looking fantastic, and the teams were doing fantastic, so they got all the credit. But the Rams have a fantastic defense that no one really talks about. So really, they just have to keep Aaron Rodgers in check. They did a really fantastic job of stopping Russell Wilson last week. Obviously, the Seahawks have a terrible offensive line, and the Packers have a little bit better of an offensive line. They're definitely going to have to take advantage of that left tackle spot with David Bakhtiari not being there. That's a huge hole on the Green Bay offensive line, losing him. So they're just going to have to get after Aaron Rodgers like they did against Russell Wilson, and just hope that they can score some points on offense.
Yeah,
it's definitely a hard case to make, but it's possible. Never say never.
Well, there's that with this game, actually, there's a matchup a lot of people are looking forward to seeing, which is Devontae Adams against Ramsey. So I wonder if you guys have any opinions on who you think would win who's going to win that matchup? Is Adams going to go off like he has all season, or Ramsey, who's been shutting people down, is he going to get the better of him? What do you guys think about that? Start with, I guess, Eric, since he hasn't talked yet.
Yeah, that's going to be a hell of a matchup for sure, man. Like that's probably going to be the most exciting thing about this game, and obviously I'm more of a Ramsey hater since he was on my Jags, and kind of a big Devontae Adams fan right now since he was the best thing about my fantasy team. But I think Ramsey's going to hold him in check, though. I mean, obviously Adams going to get some catches. Like, he's not going to completely shut him down, but it's going to be a okay game for Adams, I think. But he's not. I highly doubt he's going to be putting up these numbers that we've been seeing him get, where he gets like 10 catches for 150 yards and 2 touchdowns. Like, he's not going to have that big of a game. I'll say Ramsey keeps him in check to something like 6 catches for 74 yards. I'll say that's my prediction.
Okay, we'll see. I'll remember that in the 6 for 74, right? Okay, we'll see.
Yeah, write it down. Write it down.
Got it down. Yeah, Connor, what about you with the Ramsey Adams matchup? Where do you stand?
Yeah, I think Jalen Ramsey will be able to hold him in check. You know, Jalen Ramsey really has, like you said, he's kind of had a bit of a resurgence this year. He really was looking like a fool last year after the way that he left Jacksonville, and he was going back to his old notion of talking crap about everybody, and then he just kept getting burned, like especially in that Ravens game where he had the whole incident where he tried to fight. I'm using quotation marks, fight Marcus Peters, and he had to be carried off the field. So he's definitely had a resurgence this year, but I think he can keep him in check. The biggest thing, obviously, for the Rams' sake to help him out is they got to get that pass rush going. If they can get that pass rush going, then I definitely think he holds Adams in check. But if the Rams are starting to struggle there, then I'd probably lean more to what Eric was saying, like 6 or 7 catches for like 80 yards. But if the Rams can get that pass rush going, then I could see Ramsey holding him to something like 3 catches for 40 yards.
Okay, and then we'll end with Nate here. Where do you stand, Nate, with this matchup?
Yeah, I mean, this is definitely one that I'm looking forward to. I think Ramsey looked great. He surprised me with Metcalf yesterday, just because that guy is hard to stick with just physically. But I think if anyone can stick with Adams right now, it'd be him. So I think he's not going to shut him down. I think Adams is too good for that, especially with Rodgers playing. But I could see 50, 60 yards, 4 or 5 catches for 60 yards for Adams. I think Rodgers, they're definitely gonna have to get other guys involved for Green Bay. I'll say that for sure.
Yeah. See, I'm actually gonna end up being the most excited for Adams in this because the Rams secondary as a whole is good. So it's not like Ramsey doesn't have the effect of like a shutdown corner, as in the guy from across him on the other side of the field is weak. So I think the ball will be spread around, and that will help Adams. I do think he gets over 100 at the end of the day, just because he's been too good this year. He's been a top 3 receiver, so I'm gonna side with the wide receiver in this matchup. But you never know.
Well, hey, if the Packers, if the Packers end up spreading it around, then we'll get to hear some of those awesome names that the Green Bay receivers have, like Equanius St. Brown and Marquez Valdez-Scantling.
yeah, really.
Alan Lazard.
So now in the final playoff matchup here, we have Buccaneers versus Saints Part 3, and I saw an interesting stat on Twitter, which was something I'd been wondering too. So the percentage for the instances where teams meet for the third time and the third time in the playoffs, since the Saints went 2-0 against the Buccaneers, in those matchups in the playoffs, the team that went 2-0 is 65% to win the third in the playoffs, which was honestly better than I was thinking. So that I think gives the Buccaneers better chances than what I would have thought that percentages would have been. But we'll start with the favorites and listen to Eric talk about the X factors for the Saints in this three-peat of a game.
Yeah, this is definitely probably the matchup that I'm most excited to watch. We've been hyping up these two teams since before the season even started. So we had the pleasure, Nate and I had the pleasure of popping some popcorn while Zach and Connor broke down these teams before the season. So I'm definitely excited for this game. And the Saints, they just need to do what they've done in both of the games against Tom Brady, and that's force pressure, force him to make bad throws. In the two games that they played against each other already, the Saints got 3 sacks on Brady in each of those games. And he had 1 interception in the first game and 3 in the second game, which was a blowout. But I guess one key for the Saints, like not necessarily related to on the field though and stuff like that, that they need to do is they need to make sure that they do not get overconfident. I don't think they will, but you see that happen sometimes where teams like they've beaten the team before. We're
Steelers.
Yeah, the Browns are the Browns. Like Connor will get into that later, but like just and it's happened like all throughout sports history where you see this happen. A team beats a team, and then they think it's going to be a cakewalk the next time, and then they don't come fully prepared, and then they lose. So that's probably my first takeaway for this game. And then, as I said, the defense, if they can keep rattling Brady and force him to make mistakes like they've done in the previous games, their defense has been insanely good this year. And if they do that, then I think the Saints should win. But my biggest X factor for this game, and you wouldn't necessarily think of this as being a X factor with the way he's played this year, but Alvin Kamara is going to need to have a good game, because despite the fact despite the fact that the Saints won both games against the Bucks, Alvin Kamara did not get it going in either game. So I think if the Saints can keep doing what they've been doing on defense against the Bucks, and if Alvin Kamara can go, play the way he's played the majority of the season, then I think the Saints should win the game pretty easily. But if Kamara struggles again, or if the Saints have a bit of a letdown on defense and let Brady get going, because we've seen Tom Brady's been really interesting this year, because he's had some games where he lights it up and he throws like 5 touchdowns for 300 plus yards and all this stuff. And then you have other games where he kind of gets shut down and he looks terrible. So they got to make sure they don't let the 6-time Super Bowl champion Tom Brady show up to the game. Like they got it. They can't let that Tom Brady get going. They need to force him into mistakes early, get him frustrated, get some turnovers, get some sacks, and then get the run game going. Kind of like what Zach talked about with the Chiefs. With as potent of an offense as the Bucks have, you want to limit their possessions. You want to get ahead early so you can keep the run game going. You want to force them to play from behind and force them to have to constantly throw and not have a balanced attack. But yeah, this is going to be a great game. I'm excited for it. I as a Drew Brees fan, I'm picking the Saints to win, but I will also be rooting for them. So hopefully they can, they won the first 2, but hopefully they can win the one that matters the most here in the playoffs.
Yeah, definitely. This one matters more than the other 2 combined.
Yeah,
Nate, you have the case for the Buccaneers here. Make me proud in your analysis and your X factors.
Yeah, so I mean, this is one that I'm really interested in, because the last 2 times out, the Bucks did not look great versus Saints, especially the second game. And I think for me, the biggest X factor is really the going to be the Bucks O-line versus the Saints defense. I mean, the last time out, the Saints sacked Brady like 7 or 8 times. I think Bucks scored 3 points. Brady just did not look like himself. He gets the ball out fast, and he couldn't even get it out before the pass rushers getting there. So if that I know that O-line for Tampa Bay is kind of young, kind of not the best, but if they can hold in there versus those guys for the Saints, that's gonna be huge for Brady, especially now that he does have better chemistry with all those guys around him. So I think getting the ball out faster when he needs to is going to be less of an issue this time. I mean, he's throwing to um, Evans, Godwin, who he's been practicing with now and playing with for a whole season, and he's got Gronk up to speed. He's got AB now, so I think it's going to be more even. I think offensively, I think they're both going to put up some solid scores here, but yeah, that's really the big key for me is that New Orleans looked pretty average, I thought, in the limited amount of that Nickelodeon game I saw versus the Bears. Let the Bears, I think, hang around for too long in that one. So I think Tampa Bay's in a good spot. It's really just keep Brady up on his feet. Basically what I said last week. I think I said the same thing about against the Washington game, but as long as they can keep Brady upright and getting the ball out of his hands, I think they definitely can put up enough points to get past the Saints here.
Yeah, that's definitely, I think, the first thing that I would have said for the Buccaneers is they got to keep Brady upright. And I think the evolution of the offensive line, too, has been a good thing for the Bucs. They've been getting better and better. And they played Washington and they have a great front four and held their own against them. So we'll see if they can do the same with New Orleans. That's definitely a big matchup in the game to watch.
Well, I definitely think, too, the biggest thing in these games like this one where you've got teams that are playing each other for the third time, especially when you're in a situation like the Buccaneers are in, it's really just a question of, like, have you learned anything? What did you learn? Have you learned how to change around your team? Have you learned to fix your mistakes against this team? Because, obviously, also, we've mentioned it a couple times that second game was 38-3, obviously a big blowout, but I know it obviously doesn't mean as much this year, but that game also happened in Tampa Bay, that 38-3 blowout. It wasn't like, the 30-24 or 35-24 win in week one was in Tampa Bay, and then that blowout was in New Orleans. No, the blowout happened in Tampa Bay. So it's really going to be interesting to see how the Buccaneers, how they change around their team, because I definitely agree with Eric that they have to get the running game going, because the last game they had 8 yards rushing all game. Like, they pretty much abandoned the running game right from the start. I mean, they literally only had 5 carries the whole game. Like, Rojo had 3, and then 1 for Fournette and 1 for Blaine Gabbert of all people, which I don't know what he was doing carrying the football, but so definitely you need to run the ball more than 5 times against this team. So it's going to be really interesting to see the evolution of these two teams, and it's all going to come to head.
Yeah, definitely. So yeah, that's going to wrap up the analysis and X factors for the divisional round and the 4 games that we'll see this upcoming weekend. But let's turn it over now and talk about really a couple teams that lost over the weekend that have now joined the other 18 or so teams that didn't make the playoffs. So I'll just go ahead and we have Juju up here as a topic because I thought the stuff he said was interesting before the game, and how his team didn't back up his performance or his what he said off the field. But I'll just let Connor just have a general rant about the Steelers, their fans, and everything that he wants to say. This is your air. Let it all out, man.
Vent, bro. Vent,
sit
bro.
back and listen.
Air your grievances. Yeah, no. I mean, I guess I'll just briefly talk about the Juju thing. He had the issue earlier this season where he was dancing on the team's logos, and I can't even remember when that started. It seemed to me like I only really started hearing about it when we were losing games. So I don't know if he started at the beginning of the year or if he started it kind of halfway through, maybe around when the Dallas game started, since that's the big thing for teams when they go into Cowboy Stadium. Like, you got to do some kind of celebration on the start as an FU to the Cowboys. But so obviously there was that problem, and then after the Cincinnati loss, Mike Tomlin shut it down and was like, "No, you're not doing that anymore. Like, we're not doing this. This is not who we are." But then obviously he came back before the Browns game, and I mean, I could get being a little confident given the fact that, again, in Week 17 the Browns barely beat the Steelers practice squad basically. But you can't be overconfident to the point of just calling them the Browns and saying this is going to be a cakewalk. It is still the playoffs. There's no easy games in the playoffs. I mean, I think we saw that really throughout these games. I mean, the Colts really gave the Bills a game when no one thought that was going to be a game. The Rams managed to beat the Seahawks, and then obviously the Washington football team gave the Buccaneers more of a game than any of us thought they were going to give them. So there's no easy games in the playoffs. There's no blowouts that happen for the most part. And to go in there saying that, the Browns are the Browns are going to brown, we're just going to roll over them is not the correct attitude to have, especially for Juju going into this season when he's going to be a free agent. The Steelers already have plenty of wide receiver talent around them, and they have a bit of a history of, their players causing drama with Le'Veon Bell and Antonio Brown. And, the Steelers thought they had really put that behind them and that Juju was just going to be, he was going to be AB's replacement. He was going to be a better version of AB, but, we see he's kind of morphing into that a little bit. I still definitely wouldn't put him on the level of Bell or AB. I think he's just a young and somewhat stupid player. And, when he's going out making TikToks and doing this, he just needs to mature more, honestly. But the main thing that I wanted to talk about with this rant is, because obviously I could talk about what happened with the Steelers in that game and how, the snap at the beginning of the game, an exchange between an all-pro center and a 6'5" quarterback, and somehow the ball goes 20 yards backwards into the end zone. I could have made that snap better than Marquise Pouncey did. And Ben is not a small guy. I don't know how you miss Ben Roethlisberger snapping the ball to him, but if there's one quarterback that's the biggest target in the league, it's him. So, and obviously, Ben had 4 interceptions, a couple of which weren't his fault. And then obviously the defense, just the supposed best defense in the league, couldn't stop anything last night and didn't even get to, this team that's led the league in sacks the past 4 years couldn't even get a pass rush on, couldn't even get a quarterback hurry on Baker Mayfield all night. So even with the Browns having a banged up offensive line. So, but yeah, the main thing I wanted to talk about was their fans. The fans of the Pittsburgh Steelers are just some of the whiniest crybabies I have ever seen on social media in my entire life. This is even worse than, maybe not even worse, but it seems to me like it's right there on the level with some of these people on Facebook who are still complaining about the election in November, saying that it was fraudulent and blah, 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 blah. But that's a discussion for a different podcast. But it seems to me like the Steelers fans are right on that level. Every time something goes bad for them, even when there's something not going bad for them, even when we were 11-0, the Steelers fans were still finding reasons to complain, this could be better, or oh, we don't, they would say our run game sucks when we'd have a game where James Conner would go out and get 100 yards and they'd still find a way to say our run game sucked. It's how do you mean our run game sucked? Conner had 100 yards rushing. That's not sucking. Or, even after we would go out and like blow someone out, they'd be like, oh, well, this is like a one-time thing. And, we still need to fire Tomlin. He's still an idiot. And, Randy Fichtner's an idiot. And the Kevin Colbert's an idiot. And we need to just fire everybody and blah, 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 blah. And this fan base, it's just the fact that this fan base has been so spoiled with success. I mean, Zach and I were talking about this in our group chat. The fact that a few, well, it was a while ago, but back, if you remember, in the NFL draft, we had a kind of a similar thing talking about Packers fans with their quarterback situation, how they were complaining about, oh, well, it's time for Aaron Rodgers to move on, and, this quarterback situation sucks, and it's blah, blah, blah. It's like, you can't name another team in the NFL that in the last 30 years, they only have had 2 Hall of Fame quarterbacks. There's no other teams in the NFL that have even come close to that. And I mean, if you look at teams like the Browns and the Bills who have gone through like 20 quarterbacks at this point, they would have killed to have had a situation like the Packers have had. And there's a lot of fan bases and a lot of teams that would have killed to have the success that the Steelers have had. I mean, the still going to be tied for most in Super Bowls. The Patriots aren't breaking that this year because they didn't make it. So you're still going to have 6 Super Bowls. And, okay, so yeah, it kind of sucks that a team that has expectations, and it's been 12 seasons now since we won a Super Bowl. But when you go back and look at that, that's still more recently than not over 2/3, about 2/3 of the league. And when you think about some of those 2/3 of those teams that the Steelers have won a Super Bowl more recently, then a fair amount of those teams haven't even won one. And, some of them haven't even made it. If you're looking at teams like the Lions and the Jaguars and the Browns, teams that haven't even made it to the Super Bowl. So it's definitely a horrible situation when you're looking at it from a fan standpoint. But to just go out and whine constantly that, it's all Mike Tomlin's fault. It's always Mike Tomlin's fault. Like, it could be cold outside and it's Mike Tomlin's fault and we need to go fire Mike Tomlin. Like, or someone ate the last cookie in the fridge, so now we need to go fire Mike Tomlin. Like, it's always fire Mike Tomlin. Who else are you going to go out and hire at this point? Like, are you going to go hire Doug Marrone, Adam Gase, like all these coaches that just got fired? Like, are you really going to go? It is pretty funny.
Dude, Doug Marrone is a genius, bro. Doug Marrone is a genius. Hire him right now.
Right now. Yeah, it's like, are you going to go out and hire one of them over a coach who, in his 14 seasons in the NFL, is yet to have a single losing season? I mean, and also that's the thing, too. If you look at the Steelers since that, it's been 12 seasons since they've won the Super Bowl. Seven of those seasons, they still made the playoffs and a couple AFC championship game berths. And, again, going back to the thing with other teams, there's a lot of teams that haven't made the playoffs once in that stretch. I mean, like the Buccaneers and the Browns are just now getting back into the playoffs. They hadn't made the playoffs at all in that stretch. Then there's teams like the Lions and probably, I'm kind of blanking here, like the Lions and the Cardinals, who really only made it like once during that stretch. So, and it's like the Steelers fans in their head, it seems like every season for them, it's Super Bowl or bust, Super Bowl or bust. If there's not a Super Bowl, then we need to overhaul everything. And why haven't we overhauled everything yet? We should be overhauling everything. And it's just like, you can't have that expectation, especially for this team. I will say, this team, as a Steelers fan, obviously it didn't end very well last night, but overall, looking at this season, I'm actually quite happy with where the team ended up this year. We were coming into a season, we'd just come off a 500 finish, uncertainty whether Ben was, like, what was Ben Roethlisberger going to look like? What was this team going to look like? Was the defense going to be as good as it was last year? And, at the beginning of the season, I was never one to say before the season started that the Steelers were going to win the Super Bowl. I didn't even think they were going to make the Super Bowl this year. I know when we went back and did our NFL preview, talking about we had the top 10 teams going into the season, pretty sure I had the Steelers at 9 on that list. So I had 8 teams that I could name that had a better chance at making the Super Bowl than the Steelers. And yet, of course, all these Steelers fans are out here thinking we're the best team in the league. We're better than Kansas City. And, we're better than San Francisco and better than Baltimore. And then, of course, we lose one game and it's or we, maybe not lose one game since we started 11-0, but Ben Roethlisberger has one bad game and it's time for Ben Roethlisberger to retire and fire Mike Tomlin. This isn't how we're going to win the Super Bowl. And it's you should be happy that a team that came off a 500 season and had lost their quarterback for the whole season, came in, with major uncertainties on offense. You should be happy that we came out of this season with a division championship and made the playoffs. Like I said, obviously it didn't end the way that we wanted it to, but just be happy with what you have and be happy that, while you didn't win the Super Bowl this year, that this team has at least had success. Unlike, Zach and Eric on here are good examples of fans that haven't gotten to taste success for their team yet. So just be happy that you're part of that lucky bunch of fans that has gotten to see your team win a Super Bowl in your lifetime, and 2 even. Since they won a Super Bowl 3 years before that. So the Steelers fans just need to, I don't know, we need to kind of have a purge, it seems to me, with our fans. They just, especially the ones on social media, just find all those ones on social media that are, being fire Tomlin and all that, and they just need to be, we don't need y'all. Y'all can go, even on Facebook, there was this one guy that I saw on Facebook who apparently was a Steelers fan, and literally after that game, he was so upset and called it a disgrace that he changed his fanship to the Baltimore Ravens. I was and I didn't believe him too. I thought he was just trolling, but I went on his Facebook and literally 2 hours before he made that post, he had changed all his stuff, all his pictures and stuff to Ravens stuff. Whereas before that, it had all been Steelers stuff. So, it just seems to me like the Steelers have a bunch of these, fair weather bandwagon fans that the only reason why they're here, kind of like some of these Cowboys fans, that the only reason why they're here is because of past successes. and then they get all angry when like they're not having success now. So just purge the fan base. Don't purge the team. Purge the fan base, and y'all. I don't even know what to say anymore. I just
I say
it
for
makes
you,
me.
for you Steelers fans out there, do you know how much people like Zach and I as Jags fans, you know, like how much we would like kill to have even just a fraction of the success y'all have had in the last
Well, hey,
30
I
years?
I can do you one better. Talking about my dad, who being a Bills fan for 53 years, don't you think the Buffalo Bills and their fans, who when they when saw them go to 4 Super Bowls and lose, or like Detroit Lions fans, Atlanta Falcons fans, LA Chargers fans, these teams that have been around forever that have yet to win anything, Minnesota Vikings,
Yeah.
they would
Yeah,
just
that's
kill,
true.
like you said, to have a fraction of the success that this team has had. And, I don't see their fans being out here being
Yeah.
whiny crybabies. My dad never once has, you know, complained extensively on social media about the Buffalo Bills. And Lord knows they've had some bad years. So
You guys this year had more wins than the Jaguars the last 3 seasons combined. Like,
right.
If the Jags win one Super Bowl in my lifetime, I can buy the hat, the T-shirt, and the DVD set, and I can die happy. Okay, like.
okay, so we'll wrap this up here because we got other things to talk about. But I definitely think if the Steelers have like a fan contest or something, like they need to give Connor the award because he's honestly the most rational and like realistic and normal Steelers fan I've ever met. And like, there's questions of how you became a fan of the team. We've talked about that before, but the fact that you're not a bad fan, that's for sure. So,
well, thank you.
Yeah. Yeah, you should definitely get that award because I know I saw some. I have a follower who won the Dolphins Fan of the Year award. So whenever they do that contest, I'll nominate you.
Yes.
Yeah. So moving on now, we got 2 quarterbacks to talk about and 2 totally different types of quarterbacks here. The number 2 overall pick Trubisky and the XFL backup Heineke. So we'll start with Trubisky.
Hey, he led the Alliance of American Football League in passing yards, though.
Okay. But we'll start with Trubisky, and the big question around him is the 5th-year option was not picked up, so he'll be a free agent. The question is, what are the Bears going to do? And I've been thinking about it, and personally, I'm on the side that they don't bring him back. I don't think they will. And I know Nate is as well. So, Nate, you can join the conversation and say why you think the Bears are going to move on from Trubisky, and this was his last game ever in a Bears uniform.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's just time to do it. People have been talking about it for, since before this season, even going back to last season, when they brought in Nick Foles over the offseason. It was just, it's kind of been a while coming. He hasn't proved himself since he came into the league. It was, especially with the hindsight of, you picked him number 2 when you had Deshaun Watson and Patrick Mahomes further down the draft board. And I think it's just Chicago. I think a lot of guys have their jobs on the line there, obviously, and they got to do something to try and move forward and put the team in a new direction. I don't think he's obviously going to flame out of the league entirely. I think he has enough tools there. Obviously, he's a big, prototypical guy. He can move. He can, has the arm strength. It's just putting it all together he's had issues with. So I think he can sign somewhere. He might be a backup. Maybe we'll see if he can put that potential together. But I think it's more than time for Chicago to I think they've seen enough out of him. I feel like to know that it's time to move on. I think they just got to pull the plug and look for, either draft somebody or sign somebody and find someone they can try and build a new team around.
Yeah. So back over now to Connor. You feel differently about this. You think the Browns bring him back, right?
Yeah.
Or not the Browns, the Bears, I mean.
Well, I will say before I say my argument about Trubisky, we've mentioned this Nickelodeon game a couple times on the podcast tonight, but what in the world was the Nickelodeon voting-based thinking for when Mitchell Trubisky got the MVP of that game from Nickelodeon?
Yeah, when I saw that, I was like,
You put MVP winner on his resume now.
Well, it was funny too because like the top 3 vote getters in that were all Bears players too. It was like Trubisky, like Robinson, and Khalil Mack were like the top 3 vote getters. I'm like, do these people, like, I know these are just kids for the most part, but it's like, do they not realize the Saints are the ones winning this game? Like,
yeah, that was.
But yeah. So I think the reason why I say he's going to come back is because, one, I don't see a lot of viable options for the Bears in terms of how they're going to replace him. And I'm saying that because Nick Foles, like, they brought in Nick Foles this year, and he kind of proved that, he's not at all starting quarterback material. It's kind of the question that the analysts and teams have keep trying to pose, like, oh, can Nick Foles like be a starting quarterback? And I think he's proven time and time again, like, when he started the year, that one season when Carson Wentz was hurt, and then the few games that he had in Jacksonville, and then the games that he had this year in Chicago, that Nick Foles just isn't the answer for any team at starting quarterback. Great quarterback in the playoffs, coming off the bench, but terrible starting quarterback. So, and that's the thing, the fact that the Bears finished 8-8 this year and ended up making the playoffs, they're not going to get a high draft pick this year. They're going to be picking somewhere around I can't remember what exactly their pick was, but they're going to be picking somewhere around like 18, 19, which usually isn't great for picking quarterbacks in the draft, because we all know, Trevor Lawrence and Justin Fields are going to be off the board at the beginning. Zach Wilson will be off the board by that point. And, honestly, Kyle Trask might be off the board by that point too. So, they could take Mac Jones if they wanted to, but I just don't think that Mac Jones, I think a lot of you guys probably agree with me that I don't think Mac Jones is really going to be anything special at all in the NFL. He's surrounded by tons of talent at Alabama that kind of make him look good. So, and also, I'm not sure who they'd go out and get in free agency at this point. So I think Mitchell would be willing to take a pay cut so they can kind of get him back for maybe a little bit cheaper, because he was the number 2 overall pick. So his starting contract was pretty high, even for a rookie. So they could probably get him back at a pretty reasonable price. And I think he also, I'm not saying that this proves that he's a good quarterback or anything, but I think he kind of proved to them that he can do it in a way with the way that he played over the end of the regular season. He actually played pretty well in those last 4 or 5 games of the regular season. He wasn't making the mistakes. He was managing the game well, and the Bears were winning a fair amount of those games. So, like I said, just lack of viable options and a cheap price tag and slight flashes of good things are why I think the Bears are going to bring Mitchell Trubisky back.
All right, yeah. So now, let's talk about Heinicke to end the show, and Eric and I will talk about him. I think we're all in agreement that we don't think Heinicke will end up being the starter, but since Eric and I were Jags fans, and I'll ask him, since you watched like the end of the game and you saw like the team kind of rally behind him and everything, is there any comparisons that you have to Heinicke with Gardner Minshew, with like a flash in the pan success, and then next year he's the starting quarterback all of a sudden? I know Minshew had much more of a resume than Heinicke has, but I mean, Heinicke did play pretty well in that. Do you see any like similarities between the two guys? Not necessarily in their play, but just like the coming out of nowhere sort of thing.
Yeah, I mean, this definitely came out of nowhere for me. I mean, I already figured the Bucs were going to win that game, but then especially when I found out Alex Smith wasn't going to play, I was like, "Oh, this is going to be a cakewalk." But then, like, I was finishing up my shift at work and saw that the football team had just scored and got it within like 2 points, and I was like, "Whoa, they're making a game out of this!" And he had like a gutsy run and kind of got hurt on it, I guess. But then you could tell his teammates really rallied around him in that moment. And it was a very similar thing when Nick Foles got hurt in week 1 last year, and it seemed like, oh, it was all doom and gloom for the Jags. But then Minshew came in and put in a strong performance and had a gutsy performance against the Texans in week 2. And then eventually that win they got against the Broncos, and you could tell it was the same thing. I mean, the Jaguars, his Minshew's teammates really rallied around him in that moment, and it's a cool thing to see. You always love to see in a game when a player like plays with their heart and gives it their all and literally does everything they can to try to win, even if they're not successful. Like they lay it all on the line and they fight for every inch, every yard. They go all out, and you like to see that. And I definitely give respect to him for coming back into the game, because he had to go to the locker room and it was questionable if he was going to come back, and he came back out there, and you could tell it kind of gave the team a spark, and he was able to go down and get a touchdown drive. And unfortunately, it wasn't enough. They didn't have quite enough time at the end, but it made it for an exciting game. And like Zach said, we're all in agreement. He's probably not going to be the starter or anything, but he could be a good backup for them. And if he keeps, putting in the work, like, who knows, like maybe one day in the future, maybe something will happen with him. Who knows? And I just wanted to say something real quick too about the Mitchell Trubisky thing. I mean, I'm kind of more on the side where I don't know if they're going to bring him back or not, but in my opinion, they definitely shouldn't. The guy sucks. He can't read defenses. And this year he had a couple, good games where he was hitting some throws, but I felt like his accuracy was even worse this year too, because his problem before wasn't always that he was like inaccurate or couldn't, make the throws. The problem was he couldn't see where to throw the ball. But then this year, like in the couple of games I watched and some of that game against the Saints, I mean, he was just making some awful throws. I don't know, man. I don't know if the Bears bring him back. I don't know what they see in him. I feel like, I don't know. I mean, Nick Foles isn't very good either, but I'd rather just keep him and then maybe, move up in the draft or do something like like Mitch Trubisky sucks. Okay. So,
yeah. Hopefully, Sam Howell can redeem the UNC quarterbacks next season.
Yeah.
Yeah, and all the Bears fans are like, they need to fire Matt Nagy. Like, no, you need to fire Mitchell Trubisky. Because
seriously.
Like, how is any coach supposed to be successful with this bum as your quarterback? Okay, yeah, I'm done now.
Yeah. All right. So back to the Henicke thing. I'm in agreement with Eric how similar this feels to the Minshew thing, but I did put the Overreaction Monday picture up on here because I think a lot of people are really overreacting to this, and I think he will get like a shot to compete for the job next year. Like, he's definitely going to be back with the team, and I think he earned a right to be able to try to get the starting job next year. But and also too, I don't think Alex Smith is going to be able to play again. I don't know. He might, but still, he wasn't very. I mean, talk about not being mobile. Like, I won't make any jokes or anything, but he's not very mobile. And as far as like, there's actually a lot of potential quarterbacks that could be traded in the offseason. And like Sam Darnold, Carson Wentz are two prominent ones that come to mind. And like, they're getting traded for a reason, obviously. Deshaun Watson also too, I didn't even think of, but that'd be pretty crazy if he went to the Washington football team, Deshaun Watson. But I don't know. I don't know what it's going to take for a trade to happen, but they're going to be in contention for a trade. I would expect them to either sign a quarterback, trade for one, or draft one, and that person will have the advantage. And Heineke is going to have to beat them out, but he could definitely do it. It's just, to me, we experienced this last year as Jags fans. We got all hyped up about Minshew. We kind of overlooked his flaws because of his popularity and charisma and everything about him. He was a guy that you wanted to see succeed, like Eric was talking about, and you kind of overlook the flaws that they actually have. And then you go into the season with them starting, and it goes badly. And I would caution Washington fans about that. I wouldn't say don't be jumping up and down. We got our quarterback now, because it's not a sure thing, and one game does not make or break a player's career. So we'll see. I think he'll get a shot, but I'm leaning towards no for starting next year. So that's going to wrap up the podcast, guys. Hopefully you enjoyed all of our analysis, the rant by Connor, and then some of these topics at the end.
So say, Connor, do you feel a little better that you got that off your chest? You got to air your grievances there?
Oh, yeah, for sure. Gotta put those Steelers fans in their place.
Yeah. All right. All right. So thank you, everybody, for listening and watching. And remember, be clutch.
Bye.
See ya.
Peace.